Hey guys, Mr. George Remus here. Today we're going to be looking at the newly reworked Ultimate Lepic. The 3 builds that I have prepared to show us, all 3 do require Ultimate Lepic, will not work with base Lepic, unfortunately. But this is probably one of the top 5 strongest descendants in the game right now. And what's really nice here is one of these 3 builds you can literally use in everything. So if you're not like super committed to Lepic and you want a one build does all, this will be a guide for you. The first thing I want to do before we get into the build itself is give you a little demonstration of how this is going to work. The mod that we're going to be using to make him just so amazing is called Firearm Master, typically seen as a bossing mod. I think it works amazingly well for mobbing as well. What this does is when you use your 1 or your 3, so either of your 2 grenades, you will get a buff based off the weapon in your hand. The buff that we care about is when you have your unique weapon in your hand, you get an additive bonus to your crit rate. So in total, we'll finish out at about 85% crit rate. Now to demonstrate that rotation and what that looks like, what I like to do in combat is I like to throw my 3, press my 2, my 4, do a roll, hit them with the 1, and spam just like that. Now, you might notice I ran out of MP. In the field, when enemies are dying, you're going to be regenerating MP, so it doesn't look quite as punishing. These enemies are just invincible, so I had absolutely no way to recover MP in that little burst that we just did. All right, so now we're going to talk about the mods in the build itself. I try to organize it so we can talk about it a little smoother. So this is a crit build, which is amazing on Lepic. We will be running skill concentration, front lines, skill insight, emergency measures for as much crit damage and crit rate as we can get. We're going to be running for cooldown, focus on tech, focus on fire, nimble fingers, and MP conversion. The reason this is important is because when we're using our abilities, you don't have to spam your 2 as much as possible, but if you have the MP to afford it, you can actually activate your 2 multiple times in the burst of your 4 to get even more shots out there. So this is actually really nice if you have the MP to afford it, which we're going with just 1 range mod. There might be some gripe about this. I've done this with maximized range and skill expansion. I did not feel that much of a difference in this build itself because we're going to be shooting these grenades everywhere. So I don't think you need both the range mods. If you feel like you do, you can try switching out MP Collector for maximized range to get even more range out of this. I think the bigger problem is conserving MP and keeping it up. So we're going to run MP Collector in this slot instead. For the trigger mod, I am going to be running Death by 1,000 Cuts. There are 2 alternative options you can run. I just feel like I got the most value out of a perfect roll Death of 1,000 Cuts. As long as it's double gold or you have a slow cooldown, I still think this is the way to go with this, because you're going to be using your grenades constantly. These are going to be falling, especially when you group everybody up. These do crit based off your crit rate, so you can just get a lot of extra free damage on all these enemies that you're stacking up anyway, and they will hit multiple targets. So I just feel like this is the superior mod if you're going to be using Lepic's 3 a lot, which we will be doing. Your other 2 options that you can flirt with here is Blasting Zone, which is a new mod basically for Lepic. Even with the 100% spawn rate, I don't feel like this was worth it. The other option, just for the flat skill power increase, is a Power Beyond. This does give you just a straight 15% skill power increase, which you do feel it is noticeable. So this is not a bad choice for this build either. For the utility side of things, we went with a tech reactor with a tactical rifle mounting. We want skill cooldown and skill critical hit damage. There is a different reactor for bossing, but we'll get to that when we get there. The component set that we went with is HP based Slayer. The big reason this is important is because of its bonus 4 set ability. When defeating enemies affected by Toad, recover MP and specialized resource by a set rate. This is actually very important. Lepic can absolutely abuse this to keep your MP up. I can't really recommend this more. As far as the sub rolls on everything, you want MP recovery, max HP, and max MP, MP recovery in combat, MP recovery modifier. I went with defense. This one, you get a little bit of leeway with what you want. I went shield recover modifier and item acquisition distance. That is up to you if what you want to put on there. But this is the ideal component set for this build just because of the MP recovery that you get out of it. As far as your weapons go, these two do not matter, but there is a bonus benefit to running the Restored Relic. We'll get to that in a minute. The big gun that you want to be using in your hands is Secret Garden. As long as you are using your one consistently, which we will be doing, you will get stacks of pest control that gives you increased skill power, and it gets up to like 45% more skill power if you keep using your one grenades. And this does add up very quickly, and it's a very noticeable skill power increase. Now, the added benefit that I was talking about with Restored Relic that you might be interested in is if you use your 2 while your 4 is on cooldown and you don't want to use your grenades, you'd rather just use a weapon for whatever reason. If you activate your 2, you get the fire rate bonus, and you just unload like your glare or something like that. It's actually kind of crazy. It's a lot of fun. Another important added note on your Secret Garden, you do want to make sure you have this fire rate up mod on, because this does affect the rate in which you are firing your grenades on your 4. Now for the arcade tuning side of things, this is the setup that I went with. You could potentially get rid of these HP for this MP recovery. It's not a horrible idea. I just flirt with it back and forth. Typically, I like the extra health. That is up to you. But other than that, you are going to want to build up this direction. You're going to want to get the skill crit hit damage, skill crit rate, all the skill power you can get, a little bit of MP here, a little bit of MP there, skill cooldown. And then for our mutant cell, we're going to go with RK overheat shield. As long as your shields are up, which isn't going to be 100% of the time, admittedly, but you will be getting almost 43% more critical hit damage as long as your shields are above 50%. And with this being a crit build, this is the ideal route to go with this. The inversion reinforcement, you will have a little bit of freedom here. The absolute, probably most important thing on here I can recommend is the selective neurostimulation. This gives you a random amount of MP every 45 seconds. And if you compare this with the new fellow, the Husky, he also gives you MP every 45 seconds. So combined, you get a nice chunk of MP every 45 seconds. Unfortunately, this does come in clutch sometimes. I couldn't tell you that this is super reliable, but it is a added benefit. I do feel like it's important. The other options here is like RK circulation tactic. This gives you skill cooldown. It does have its own cooldown, so this doesn't have 100% uptime, but this is another one that comes in clutch time to time. And when you feel it, you feel it. And then I've been running the deploy resonance device for the duration. You don't have to use this. You can switch this out for whatever you want, whether that's an attribute damage or one of these other things to go with your weapons. But that is 100% up to you on the third option. Some important notes for this build before we move on to the Colossus version of this build is this does work on everything. As is, you can use this to farm Axion planes efficiently. It's fun above anything else. You do a lot of damage. It feels great. It looks flashy. It's one of the coolest builds I've ever seen. Typically people use this for bossing, but I do think this is a great addition into mobbing as well. But now we're going to look at the Colossus build itself, so you guys can use this. I actually use this every time for the open world Colossi because it absolutely melts them. The setup is a little different, but it's very similar. We only run 3 of the crit mods. We got rid of frontline, and the reason being is this is just a better damage, and we need to cut damage out somewhere. We got rid of the range because you're just putting it in one spot and absolutely melting whatever you're shooting. We did put on skill extension and maximize conversion. This is both for skill cost and extending our 4. You can try switching this out for maximized duration if you want to, like, get a little bit more time out of this. You will run out of MP. That is just going to be what happened. You have more time than MP to spend, but that is rough. I haven't found a way to work around that. Should one in the future come up, try switching this out with maximized duration to get even more time with it and shots off. And then we got our 4 cooldown mods so we can spam our 2. The trigger mod this time, we did end up going with Power Beyond just for the flat 15% skill power bonus. No other benefit to this. This is just why we're using this. Here with us today to demonstrate hyperfocus is old G-Daddy Gluttony himself. To demonstrate how hyperfocus works, you want to get a firearm critical hit first before you do any damage to lock in that additive crit damage bonus. So you see what this will look like is you shoot till you get a crit, activate your 2, activate your 4, make sure you roll, throw a grenade, and then fire away. And then you just spam like that. Now, this did run a little slow because I was demonstrating and talking like as I go. It's much smoother with practice, and there's a reason for every move that we just made. The utility side of this is going to look a little different here. The reactor is almost the same. I went with additional skill attack when attacking Colossi. Truthfully, if you want to just do an immense amount of burst damage, get rid of the skill cooldown, put in skill crit damage with the additional skill attack while attacking Colossi. Those two things combined, amazing damage. But if you use this on something that you're not killing in one burst, you're kind of left with your hands in the air waiting for your cooldown to reset. That can feel kind of rough. That is up to you. I don't typically use that, but you could use that. The component set we're going to run this time is called Firebrand. If you don't know what this does, it gives you a little bit of range. We don't care about that. A little skill duration. We don't really care about that so much. But the extra fire skill attack on enemies afflicted by burn, which your first grenade that you're throwing out to trigger Firearm Master can apply, gives the enemies a 30% fire resistance reduction. So you're just stacking even more damage on top of damage. And it's a lot of HP in here. A lot of HP and shields. So you get even more recovery. So that's always an added bonus. And we're still going to be using Secret Garden for the skill benefit. Before the Colossus fight starts, you can sit there and spam grenades and not worry about your MP to get these stacks rolling. The arcade board does look a little different compared to the last build. The big difference here is we went for as much skill power as we can. We went for Colossus damage, and this will multiply with our reactor. So if this is really, you only want this if you have the Colossus damage on your reactor. If you don't have that, don't worry about this. We did get the MP recovery here. We got a little duration. We did sacrifice a tiny bit of crit rate. We got our crit damage. We got our MP. We got our skill cooldown. We got our skill power in general. And then our mutant cell, again, is RK overheat shield for the added crit damage. Some final notes for the bossing side of this. You do just use the same inversion reinforcement as the previous one. Not quite as important for the boss. If you want to use this in the Abyss boss, you actually can get a clear using this. I have done it. I'm working on getting a challenge clear with this. You will be running around screaming, getting shot at for this specific Abyss boss. Should they add an Abyss boss that isn't super resistance to fire damage, this is going to be solid. Unless there's some other unforeseen change, it's a solid build for that. Alright, now for a demonstration of how explosive stack build works. You're going to throw your 3, pretty basic stuff. You throw your 3, it sucks all the enemies up. The new benefit is our grenades actually will travel into the 3. Look at all those damage numbers. The other difference is instead of throwing 1 grenade, you'll notice we're throwing 4. This scales with your range increase that you got going on. So the more range you have, the more grenades you can throw. I think the max that you can achieve right now with the current range increases is like 5 or 6. Mine has 4, and it works fine for ad clearing, which is what you're going to be using this for. The other added note here is there's a little number underneath your 1 ability, which is your grenades. Shots fired will instantly refund your grenade. So let me toss out my 3 grenades real quick. If I use my 2 for the fire rate bonus and just fire, instant cooldown. I got all 3 of my grenades back already. I'm using Python for its fire rate for this. You don't have to do that. You can use whatever you would like. The utility side of things, we use our original reactor, skill cooldown, the crit hit damage, the fire, the tech, that's all we're going to be using. We're obviously going to be using Slayer for the 4-piece set. You can try switching these out for things like Firebrand. They give you range. I didn't feel like it was worth it. Just run this for the MP recovery because you're going to be burning through it. For demonstration purposes, Python, I don't have it on my reactor, so I don't use it. I think using Secret Garden works just fine for getting your grenades back with the fire rate bonuses that you can have now. Some final notes for this build is the inversion reinforcement and the arcade tuning are the same for the first build in this video, so you can just use that. The aspects of this build that you can use this on is anything AoE based with mobbing, so like action on planes, kills everything just great. This is probably the more popular build. I do think it like ad clears a little bit better, but then when you get to the bosses at the end of some of these activities, it's not quite as good. It is still good, it still works, but I just think the original build is more fun. I just didn't want to rob you guys of that content. All that being said, if you found this video helpful at all, do not hesitate to smash that subscribe button. Helps the channel grow. If you are looking for a Discord group of a small community for TFD, there's a link down below, as well as my creator code, as well as the link to our Twitch. We do stream and help people with content throughout the week. So if you're interested in any of that, check that out. If that is it, that's all I got for you guys today. So with that, I hope to see you next time.